My name is Isela Pena-Rager. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I am a representative, one of the chair-elect for Alianza, which is the Chicanx Latinx staff organization. And I'm here actually representing CISO, which is the Coalition of Ethnic Staff Organizations. I'm also the Assistant Director of LNS Advising and the co-chair for the Cal Coaching Network, which is a fairly new organization on campus community of practice. Today, we are joined by the following facilitators. Cary Sweeney from the UC Berkeley Retirement Center. She's the director for that. Elliot DeTusa, the assistant counselor for UC Berkeley Employee Assistant. And then Kieran Joel, UC Berkeley Employee Assistance Counselor. And then a little bit later, we'll get a real treat and hear from UC Berkeley retirees who were nominated by the Coalition of Ethnic Staff Organizations. The Coalition of Ethnic Staff Organizations, which we call CISO, includes the Native and Indigenous Council, formerly known as the Native American Staff Council, MENASA, which stands for Middle Eastern, North African, South Asian, and then Black Staff and Faculty Organization, also known as BSFO, APASA, which is the Asian Pacific American System-Wide Alliance, and Alianza. So our panelists later on are Marilyn Brown, who was nominated by the Native and Indigenous Council, as I mentioned, is formerly known as the Native American Staff Council when Marilyn was a part of the staff at UC Berkeley, followed by Harry Legrand and Sid Reel, who were nominated by the Black Staff and Faculty Organization. And last but not least, Michael Trevino was nominated by Alianza. I also want to give a special thanks right now to Camille Coué from the Retirement Center. She's the Associate Director. And then Tyrone Weiss from the Associate Director of Student Experience, Haas School of Business, also the Chairman of the Black Staff and Faculty Organization and Co-Chairman of the Veteran Staff Organization for coordinating the event today. So the first thing I want to do is, if we could go to the next slide, I wanted to start off with the land acknowledgement. And those of you who have heard of land acknowledgements may or may not know that they've become really popular in the last couple of years. And with that, sometimes it can get a little watered down. So I just wanted to say a little bit about the land acknowledgement before we go into it. The land acknowledgement is one piece of an acknowledgement of the peoples and the land that we occupy. Really what I want to encourage you to do is to engage in learning, to be humble, to keep learning and asking questions curiously and respectfully, honor and uplift the voices of Native and Indigenous people, take care of the land by doing things like recycling and treading lightly on the earth, volunteer or donate financially to Native and Indigenous owned businesses, and then look for things in your local area, such as where I live in Oakland, California, and that is donating to the Shumi Tax Fund. And so I encourage you to go to the website that's right on the screen there, that is maintained by the Native American Student Development at UC Berkeley. So the land acknowledgement, UC Berkeley sits on the territory of Huchun, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chochenyo-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County. This land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familial descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize that every member of the Berkeley community has and continues to benefit from the use and occupation of this land since the institution's founding in 1868. Consistent with our values of community, inclusion, and diversity, we have a responsibility to acknowledge and make visible the university's relationship to Native peoples. As members of the Berkeley community, it is vitally important that we not only recognize the history of the land on which we stand, but also we recognize that the Muwekma Ohlone people are alive and flourishing members of the Berkeley and broader Bay Area communities today. This acknowledgement was co-created with the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and the Native American Student Development and is a living document. And if you want to take a little more closer look at the land acknowledgement itself, as well as recordings about how to turn the land acknowledgement and go beyond that and put it into action, I encourage you to visit the website that I've just linked in the chat. And with that, I'll hand it over to Cary. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Isela. I appreciate it. I'm so happy to be with you all here today and to partner the Retirement Center, to partner with the coalition of ethnic staff, and for all of you, thank you for making time for yourself today to talk about this important topic. So today we'll really focus on more of the transition. So we're going to talk about envisioning your retirement and identifying next steps to take for it to be a smooth one. Now, I'll note that people here today are anywhere from it's never too early to start planning for retirement. So you could 10 years out, 5 years out. It's always important to start early. So today's session will be a little less about the nuts and bolts of retirement. We're going to send you some information about that following this event. So questions about your retirement pension, your retirement health benefits. There will be a longer workshop with partnering with the Retirement Administration Service Center at the Office of the President and Fidelity, so that you can learn more about that piece of your retirement, which is very, very important. But today we're really going to talk about the transition of retirement. And in the agenda today, you'll see is going to start a little bit with talking about transitions in retirement to give some context. Then Kieran will join us from the Tank Center to tell you a little bit about the services they're available for you. Elliot will be talking about relationships and your network in retirement. And then we'll move over to the retiree panel, which we want to get to because it's going to be so much fun. And I'm honored to be here today with the retirees that have volunteered their time to share with you their experience. You're encouraged to put your thoughts and reactions into the chat to the right. And I'm going to start with a question to hopefully get you to do that. We can leave it here on the agenda. That's fine. So raise your hand or put in the chat box. I want to get a sense of your combined years of service in this room, because often it's pretty impressive. So those of you who have up to 19 years of service with UC, raise your hand or put something in the box that says me. 19 years of service, 20 years of service. I'm going to get to you. So 20 years of service, raise your hand and put your years in the chat box. Oh, starting to pick up. Now 30 years of service. Those of you that have 30 or more years of service. And anyone else, just put your years of service that you know of it in the box. There can be an estimate. And what's amazing is just if you start to add this all up, which is really the wonderful part of working at the Retirement Center, is you get to connect with people that have so much wisdom and so much history with this university. So I want to thank you for that and sharing that. There's also an incredible amount of experience in the room with transitions. So if we'll go to the next slide about smooth transitions. So transitions really, this is really, I'm honored to share with you what we're learning about transitions at the Retirement Center. So most people kind of are eagerly counting down the days of retirement, used to be the retirement estimator or UC Raise, you just checking it once a month, maybe once a day, you start, and then most feel a blissful happiness from the intense pressure of the 40-hour or more work week. And now that we're home, work and home seem to blend more. So it's really hard to put a finger on that work time. And most people are happy right from the beginning. Of course, some of us are back on campus too. So time is just sort of in a transition, but most people are happy when they retire. And this, but then the giddiness kind of wears off, the giddy glow kind of wears off. And as they adjust to some of the unstructured days. And for those that did go home to work, some of that is already experienced in a way. The schedule and the routine really changed. And so although most people welcome this flexibility, most of our retirees share an unexpected feeling of being at loose ends, which typically takes some time. It's hard to put a number on it, but 6 months, sometimes 2 years, and that can be up and down depending on what your transition is like. And sometimes it can be longer. So retirees really vary greatly on whether they see this as an open space of time or as a blank canvas to paint, or open space of time, or a blank canvas to paint, or a scary dark void. So retirement is best understood as a transition, not an event. It's a rite of passage. It's an event marking an important stage in someone's life. Today, we'll look at some of that and hear from the panelists later on to how to plan for that smooth transition. So we'll go to the next slide there. So like with many of the transitions we've experienced before, it can be both rewarding and challenging and bring some emotional reactions. Excitement for learning new things and meeting new people, and the fear of unknown. Not sure what you'll do, not sure you'll do a good job or you'll make new friends. A major feature of the transition is change. So when I ask, how many like change, some of you may think to yourself, yeah, I love change. Maybe not so much. So when you think about some of the transitions that come to your mind, when you think of it, what kind of life transitions do you think about? And these are just some of them, and you can put them in the chat box. What are some transitions that come to mind when you think of life's transitions? And someone that says motherhood, moving. Okay. And then the next slide is, we've had many transitions. So here are some of those. And some of the people, it's coming in now. So marriage, Grammyhood, that's a great name. Death of a family member, buying a home, illness, new job, travel, cancer. So throughout life, clearly in this room, we've made a lot of transitions, birth of a child, relocating, etc. Let's go to the next slide. So consider change in terms of a beginning. And I want to thank everybody. This is great for your participation in the chat box. Change usually happens quickly. It's situational. It's experienced externally and visibly. So think about some of the things you just mentioned: changing jobs, marriage, new home. Some people said, empty nest, illness or sickness, a loss of a loved one. But the transition part is really hard. It's the psychological process and is experienced internally. It might be invisible or hard to observe in others. In order to do it, we might have to let go of something, grieve, and understand in terms of endings, beginnings with leaving something behind, letting go before you make a new beginning. It takes time. And so while some are very excited, and even though they're looking forward to it and they're ready to go, they wouldn't even think about grieving the university. There is some change in leaving something, even if you're leaving, no matter why or how you're leaving it, there's a change. So I'll go to the next slide. So these are the stages of transition, and these are helpful for me when I think about any transition. I'm not so close to retirement at this point. I have some goals, but I do think about transitions, and the transition involves letting go of what was and beginning something new. So if you look at this picture and the ending and letting go of what you have, which starts the transition, you lose your old connections to the activities and people that used to matter to you. And in the neutral zone, the task here is to find the significance of the transition. This can be a slow and uncomfortable process. As my mom would say, it's where you get your boots on and you're sitting in the mud a little bit. It can be. And without this process, you might risk losing the thread of your personal development, your personal growth, even into retirement. So you'll be left with an inexplicable change and an overwhelming desire to put the pieces back together as soon as possible. So this is why sometimes we see people go right back to work full-time, maybe try to go right back to what they were doing or trying to make some semblance of it. I think the question is really to get to know yourself and recognize that this transition may be confusing and sort of overwhelming in some cases. So this slide set really is a way to help make sense of the changes, which is the source of the book that it's from. Okay, we'll go to the next one. So you want to ask yourself, this book is that I just mentioned earlier, the Bridges book, ask yourself what you can let go of and what is standing by for you to give it attention. The first question marks the difference between change and transition, since in transition, we must start with letting go. People may be more likely to ask what new thing they can add to their lives. Though they may be getting an interesting answer, they won't be able to use it to make a meaningful transition because people have to start with endings, letting go of things before they can make new beginnings. The second question points to the things that you may have been putting on hold, things you have always wanted to pursue, or caregiving that's sort of overtaken your events. This thing is like a message to you, a message that is standing just outside the door of your everyday awareness, waiting for you to give it attention. In the Bridges book, in his work, he calls these the first and second question, because the letting go process initiated in the first questions, the process of making an ending, must clear the ground before the second process. So you're launching the next chapter of your life has room to grow. Okay, so there's a quick worksheet that everybody has. If one of the panelists, Camille or otherwise has that link to it, we have a worksheet that was given out earlier, and you can advance to the next slide and it will show it, show that worksheet. Maybe not. So you all should have received a worksheet that we got, that we sent out earlier, and we can try to get a link to it in the, it's in the folder that, Isela, if you have that to put into the links. What that transition sheet will show is at the top, you'll see a timeline. Think of all the major life transitions you've experienced over time, over the years. And once you've done this, look in the green box just below the timeline and consider the inner resources that you use to get through these transitions. So divorce, buying a house, going to high school, college, etc. So you'll look at that, and there's a series of internal resources that you might use, like determination, faith, mediation, flexibility, confidence, humor, and positive thinking. And just below it are external resources: family, colleagues, counseling, friends, mentors, teachers, support groups. So what this workshop is good for you to use is you can use it later, or you can put into the chat box now, and then I'm going to move on to pass it to Kieran to get started on the relationship piece and the services of Tang. It's just to think about those life changes that you've had and what inner resources you drew on, and what external resources you drew on, and any other resources, and what surprised you on the other side of that transition, and what are you particularly proud of in that transition. So if you want to take a second to just look at that and maybe call out, let's say, for example, there were some, I'm going to call out some of the things, marriage or starting college. What were some of the inner resources that you would have used to make that transition? Confidence, flexibility, determination, mediation. You could put those in the chat box. And then external resources: family, counseling, friends, support, technology, your religion, etc. And as you're thinking about the group's conversation today and the panelists when they talk, start to think about your own things, and also maybe what the panelists drew on, what you could tell that they drew on to navigate the transition of retirement. And because I think I've gone a little over time, I'm going to pass it on to the next slide, which is building your support network with Elliot, and Kieran is going to kick it off from here. And thank you, Kieran, for putting in the chat box some food for thought.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kieran Joel. I'm with the Employee Assistance Program, which serves employees both at UC and at the lab. And what we offer are short-term, free, and confidential services. Our staff is made up of licensed counselors who are trained to assess and provide short-term support with a wide variety of issues, for example, depression, anxiety, general stress, burnout, work or family conflict, relationship issues. And one of the reasons that we just wanted to talk a little bit about employee assistance today is because we do have folks who reach out to talk to us about some of the emotional aspects that come with kind of that transition to retirement that we're talking about today. Especially because we're confidential service, people find it helpful to come and talk to us, just so that they have a place to kind of share and talk openly. It's also sometimes helpful to talk to someone who's fairly unbiased. So I know some, folks have expressed to me that they have loved ones who have, really vested interest in their retirement. So, children or partners who are really saying, yeah, please retire. Want you to have, fun and do your hobbies again, but it's not always that easy, right? There's lots of other things to consider. I also want to highlight that Employee Assistance offers an elder care program to offer support and resources for those that are caring for or concerned about an elder or a dependent adult. We acknowledge that at times it's caregiving duties that can be the reason that someone is considering retirement, or retirement might mean taking on additional caregiving duties that folks didn't have before. And our elder care counselor, Natasha, is a wonderful resource for current employees. You can find more information about our services on the University Health Services website. We're part of the Be Well at Work program. And I believe some information, like our workshop flyer, was sent out as well. And I'll just go ahead and answer this question really quickly that's in the chat, that employee assistance cannot be accessed by retirees. It's for current employees and folks who, if you're within 30 days of your separation date, you can also access resources. So just, plan ahead for that. With that, I'll pass it over to Elliot. And please feel free to continue. I'll still be here. You can send me a private message or put it in, general question in the chat, and I can help answer those.
Well, thank you, Karen, and good afternoon, everybody. My name's Elliot. I'm Karen's colleague. I'm one of the employee assistance counselors. It's really an honor to be here. I've had the privilege of partnering with Cary the past couple years and co-presenting this workshop, and just seeing the service time as you all chatted kind of your numbers in the chat box. It's just really incredible to see. And to self-disclose, I'm at 3 years right now, so I have a bit of time to get all up to your levels. But in those 3 years working here as an employee assistance counselor, I've met with plenty of people that are going through transitions, changes, disruptions, and that are struggling with it. Feelings of loss, feelings of uncertainty, even physical health consequences because of it. And so when I'm meeting with somebody, almost every single time, an area I'm going to assess with them is their social support. It could be an isolating time when we're thinking about changes, and who you're connecting with and people that you can talk with really positively impacts your health, decreases isolation. And so, as you start exploring, in this workshop, preparing for retirement, what's going to be really important to meet your goal of your ideal retirement life is the social support and the people that you'll be around and the people you spend time with. So for our time today, what I'd like to do is share a little bit about just the importance of social support, and I'll provide some kind of evidence, just so it's not my word. I'll provide you some studies that I think are pretty impactful, and then we'll wrap up by looking at your individual networks. We'll kind of personalize this, assess kind of who's in your life now and how that might change come retirement. Okay. So kind of the first thing I wanted to mention was a study, a pretty famous one. It's called a Harvard Nurses Study. And it's well known. It started in 1976. The origins of it was to kind of do long-term testing of oral contraceptives. And so they had quickly realized they had this incredible research group. It was nurses that were very knowledgeable about their health. It was nurses that were accurate reporters. And so this sample really morphed into just studying life factors, health factors over this really long period of time. So there's plenty of findings from it. The one that I think pertains here is what they found about social support. So those that reported greater levels of social support also reported greater health, greater overall life satisfaction, and even longevity. So hugely impactful. There's some other studies that were made off of this by researchers at Harvard that kind of look at the flip side, and they found out that social isolation actually carries the same mortality risk as major life risk factors such as smoking. And conversely, they also found strong social life tended to equate to better health and healthier behavioral habits. For something a little bit closer to home, I also wanted to mention a study that was done in Alameda County. You might be familiar with it, the Neighborhood Social Environment Study by George Kaplan. So that was right here in Alameda County where they looked at residents. It was kind of geared towards longevity and mortality risks. The information that they found is really striking. Those that reported a low social environment had much higher mortality rates than really anybody else, and that was taking into account income level, education, race and ethnicity, perceived health status, smoking status, alcohol consumption. So despite like all these generally negative lifestyle factors, those that were more socially connected tended to live longer. Okay. Final thing just to mention, there's a psychologist at Pepperdine, Luis Cozzolino. It's kind of a leading expert in aging, and his research indicates that more support, expanded social support, leads to better mental health, higher cognitive performance, and greater immunological functioning. So it's pretty strong evidence. What we can take from these studies, is that for you to match kind of the retirement life that you might envision and the one that will be fulfilling, such a huge factor is going to be your social support in expanding it. What we know as you're preparing for retirement is that your social life will be impacted. We know most likely for most people it's going to shrink, and our coworkers, our communities on campus, to people we've potentially seen every day for years. It makes up a huge part of our connections. It's a very tough thing to think about, right? As we're changing that and potentially losing that. We know there's some long-term friendships that will persist, but maybe morph and look a little bit differently when you retire. There's some people that, maybe we don't stay in touch afterwards, which is, part of kind of the natural process. So I wanted to pause just a moment, after presenting that and shift to something a little bit different. If just to address like a bit of the elephant in the room. So, what I've mentioned so far is kind of major life transitions impacting our social life, and if we could think of something that was like about 2 years ago, almost to the day, the COVID pandemic started, and you all have been managing, a giant transition that impacts your social life already. We're all still managing it. So, I mention this because it gives us some really valuable information and some really good insights into what your needs, might be in the future, right? What were some of the successes with your social interactions during COVID? What were some of the challenges? So some questions just to think about, since we do have this huge transition that we've already managed that impacts our social life, would be kind of how fulfilled have you been socially? Who are the people that, maybe you've missed being in touch with that indicate you want to be in touch with, in the future? Have your needs been met socially during this time? How have you adapted to stay in touch with people, right? We've all had to make kind of changes to keep our social interactions, whether it's doing Zoom calls like these or phone calls. But retirement will be another example, right? Where you'll adapt and kind of change things to maintain your social connections. So just as some of the studies that I've presented can guide us a little bit in the importance, your own personal experience over these past couple of years will be really important information to guide you into what will be a happy and fulfilling social life post-retirement. So if I could get the next slide changed, and then the next one, thank you, wonderful. I'm going to introduce this activity that, primarily you'll fill this out post-workshop, but I wanted to just kind of talk over it and share just some insights that I've learned from the past few years of presenting this activity and hearing from the crowd about just certain themes and findings. So this is a relationship audit, so it's like as simple as that. What it's going to be is, you taking really a close look at your current social network, and then kind of looking at how it might change in retirement. So just to kind of read along here. So the middle circle here is yourself. So you could feel free to write your name in it. The ring that's closest to the center, that is the closest people in your life. So for most people, that's going to be your partner or spouse. For some people, it's going to be a best friend, a child, a parent. What you'll want to do is actually write in the names. Your inner circle, kind of write their names in there. The next ring out is close friends and family members. You might find some people at work fit in this circle. People that you consider a very close friend. And so again, you'll want to be specific, kind of write in names that come to mind that fit this this range of friends. The final ring is going to be kind of acquaintances, people you might know through social groups, faith-based groups, community groups. And here's where you'll see a lot of colleagues as well. The people that just through work, and maybe that you've seen and said hello and goodbye and checked in about your weekend, but maybe that will greatly change when you're not with them every day. You also might find some family members here that you're not particularly close with as well. So that'd be the first step, right? Is get really specific. This is an audit where you want to write names in there. Once you have that filled out, you'll go through and you'll underline each name that you think the relationship will change in retirement. And so just sharing kind of some things I've heard from people, as you might expect, that outer ring, a lot of names will be underlined, right? These are, as I mentioned, like, the colleagues maybe that, you'll lose contact with. So you'll notice kind of people on the periphery will change. You'll also notice probably people on that inner ring might change as well. You might be sharing 3 meals a day with, your partner or spouse as opposed to 1. So there's going to be certainly a change there when you think about retirement life with your closest people. So that's kind of, the one part of the exercise, right, is sort of examining how it might change. Once you've done that, this is a pretty good piece to reflect on and kind of identify sort of some themes that you might have seen. So some things I've heard from people would be kind of, there could be a lack of diversity now post-retirement. A workplace brings us with people that might be younger, people of different backgrounds. And so that might be an indicator to you, right, of like in retirement, engaging with, kind of more diverse, like social network, people that aren't your same age, people that, identify differently. So just like, we're diversifying like retirement funds and money, it's like your social network could be like that as well, where work sort of allows that, and it'll be kind of up to you to see what will be the right fit for that. So yeah, most importantly, when you're doing this, it's really meant to give you a snapshot of, what your ideal social connections will look like post-retirement. And so I hope this is a helpful piece for that, just as you start thinking about the importance of it, about how you might adapt come retirement. Great. Well, I wanted to turn it back over to Cary now to start the conversation now.
Hey, thanks, Elliot. Thanks. Okay, well, it's the fun part. I'm going to give Camille a second to spotlight all of our wonderful panelists and our facilitator, and want to thank Kieran and Elliot for their being available today and letting us know about their resources. Of course, the Retirement Center is available to you, and following this event, we will be sending you an email with a list of resources and contact information so that you can have some resources for yourself to start planning. Okay, so I think what we'll do is hand it over to Isela and the panelists. So thank you.
Thank you. So we can just keep the slide on for now, and then I'll just ask Camille if you could stop sharing after I'll give you that cue. So again, my name is Isela. I'll be your facilitator and moderator for the panel today. The fun part that I've been waiting for. And so Isela Pena-Rager, she, her, ella, chair-elect for Alianza. And we have Marilyn Brown, who had 32 years of service at UC Berkeley, retired in 2016 from the Controller's Office of Billing and Payment Services. As I mentioned earlier, was elected and was a member, was nominated today by the Native and Indigenous Council, and formerly known as the Native American Staff Council, which she was a member of. And then Harry LeGrand, 35 years of service at UC Berkeley, retired in 2016 as well, as Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs and a member of the Black Staff and Faculty Organization. Sid Reel, 11 years of service at UC Berkeley, retired in 2019 as the Director of Staff Diversity Initiatives, member of the Black Staff and Faculty Organization. And Michael Trevino, 23 years of service at UC, 11 years at UC Berkeley, retired also in 2019 from UC San Francisco Student Affairs, formerly served as Assistant Dean of Goldman School of Public Policy, member of Alianza. And so now we can stop sharing so that we can see all the beautiful faces a little bit more clearly. Awesome, thank you. And I'm gonna just start. We do have some questions that we prepared a little bit ahead of time, and you'll have an opportunity to ask your own questions. Tyrone has listed a link there for the panel questions and upvoting. So if you have a question, go ahead and put it in there. We'll look at those kind of toward a little bit later when we are done asking some of these questions, and then you'll be able to upvote. So if you see a question that you're like, that's a really cool question, you can vote it up, and then it'll come up to the front, okay, to the top. So to get started, let's see here. I think I'm going to actually start with, let's see, Marilyn. Are you cool to start? Yeah?
Yeah.
Marilyn, I have a question for you. But the first question I have for you is about how your relationships have changed since you retired from UC Berkeley. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, thank you. You know, I didn't really plan on retiring years in advance. It was like a last minute thing. I think the greatest thing I noticed when I retired is, like the week after I retired, I really missed my coworkers and my colleagues. I missed the daily banter. I missed hearing my nickname. My old supervisor, Adrienne, gave me the nickname of Mare Bear. And I missed hearing that each day. being welcome. Mayor Bear, what's this? Mayor Bear, Mayor Bear. And that was shocking to me how much I miss my coworkers. And the second thing, relationship-wise, was being at home with my husband every single day. That was a huge transition for both of us because my husband, Aaron, was very chill, very relaxed. And I was like a whirling dervish mini tornado just going through the house. I know I made him nuts so many times, just trying to, I think I was on a weekend schedule. I hadn't really eased into my retirement. So I felt like I had to try to get everything done all at once. So that was those two things, relationship-wise, were things that really stick out to me. And it took a while for me to adapt to it.
Marilyn, thank you. Does anybody call you Mayor Bear now, or do you want anyone to call you? Yeah.
Mayor Bear is in Washington State, Oklahoma. I have all my girlfriends, there's like 12 of them. It's Mayor Bear. Everybody calls me Mayor Bear.
That's
So,
beautiful. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing those changes in relationships for you. And I'm going to ask Michael the same question. What have you noticed about your relationships and how they've changed?
Yes, thank you. My relationships have gotten better since retirement. For a lot of the things I think that have been mentioned, I had more time. Before retiring, I used to leave the house early in the morning. I would always make coffee, bring coffee in bed to my wife before I'd head out the door. And then I'd come home late, and usually it was after dinner. Often it was after dinner. And we have kids, and I would miss a lot of time. After retirement, our relationships got better because I had some time. So like my wife, now it's been breakfast in bed, not just coffee, because I have the time. I love to cook. So I've always done the grocery shopping. I've always done the laundry, always done all of that. But now I got time to do more. I make dinner a lot, take care of a lot of the errands that need to get done. I'm still doing a lot of work, but I'm picking and choosing what I want to work on. So I'll have some Zoom calls during the day, make lunch. I'm just there. I'm there more for my family, and it's been great. They love it. They really appreciate it, and I appreciate it. I like being able to help.
That's great. Michael, you're setting the bar really high for retired husbands right here. Thinking about breakfast in bed. That's so kind and thoughtful of you. It sounds like it's something you really enjoy.
I do enjoy it. I do. My wife and I, we've been together 35 years, and I've always enjoyed it. It's actually very strategic because I'm more of a morning person, and I know she's not. And so her having that cup of coffee while I'm in the shower, it gives her time to sort of wake up, and everybody's better. When mama's happy, everybody's happy. When mama's not happy, nobody's happy. So it's just good. Everybody wins.
Thank you, Michael. Same question for Harry. Harry, how have your relationships changed?
Well, my wife actually had stopped working in 1992. So she was definitely the ruler of our council. So when I retired in 2016, it was quite an adjustment because she had her way of doing things. And then I came in there and just kind of upset the apple cart. She's a morning person. And when I say a morning person, she's probably up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. If I stay in bed till 7 o'clock, I've slept the day away. So that was an interesting adjustment for me. And she's still that way. I mean, she's in bed probably by 7, 8 o'clock at the latest usually. And I'm a night owl. She's kind of the morning person. So that was an adjustment, I think, for us to make as a couple, mostly because she had been home so much longer than I actually had imagined. I think from a campus related perspective, I miss the students. I really enjoyed my time there with the students and the staff that I had within the student affairs division. But the minute I retired, I got really sick, like the flu or something, for about a month. So I realized, oh, my body must have been exhausted, and I'm such a workaholic. I just kept pushing, and the minute I stopped working, it was like, oh my God, now I have time to be sick. And I just kind of went through that process. I mean, luckily it was nothing serious. I was just grateful I was retired, because that's when that crazy Mayo Malalovich or whatever was on campus. And I was watching Steve Sutton and the police talking to the media about him disrupting the campus disruption around that. Oh my God, that was 60 days. I was 60 days from that. So that was a blessing in disguise, I think, even though back in the fall, they were trying to get me to chair that committee. And they said, Harry won't be here when he comes. And I was like, no, and Harry is not coming back. So that part of it's been good. I'm still in contact with some folks. My heart will always be with BSFO. I think I was chair for like 19 years. I'm just kidding. It seemed like a really long time that I was in charge of that organization. So I really enjoyed every moment of that. But I think having that time to be around family and friends has really been very rewarding.
Thank you, Harry. You're getting a lot of love, as is the rest of the panel in the chat. Just somebody said it's like a warm hug that they needed, and it's certainly something that we need right now. We need a lot of this wisdom and joy and beauty that we're hearing and seeing today with everything else going on in the world, right? And Harry, you gave me some flashbacks to the Milo incident. That was not fun. I'm so glad you avoided that. That was not good.
No kidding.
Sid, how about you? How have your relationships changed?
Well, one of the things people haven't mentioned is the impact of the pandemic. Because I retired, it was July 2019, and what it was, 6 months later, we were into the pandemic. And I had this vision that, yeah, you're leaving campus, but you could still come back and hang out and do what you used to do, go have coffee with people or lunch or, a little drink after work or whatever. And then I didn't set foot even in the city of Berkeley for a year and a half or something like that. And so, getting accustomed to doing Zoom relationships and talking to people that way, and just all the things that go with, suddenly you have new responsibilities, and a lot of it is based on home. And I realized I was never at home. I was always on the go. And so changing my whole lifestyle so that now I'm more at home, because as a matter of fact, I'm also now a caregiver for my partner. So we spend a lot of time in the house, and where I used to watch maybe 3 hours of television a week, that TV is always on, even if I'm not looking at it. It really changes things for you. And then the other thing I realized is that being in retirement, you really have to protect your personal time, because people come at you with all kinds of requests and wishes. And of course, you're going to do this or that. And no, you got to slow things down and just make sure that you really are taking some time for yourself.
Sid, talking about protecting your personal time, I just want to say thank you for taking the time to do this, and like sharing your wisdom for people and choosing this as a priority. So we're really thankful for the gift of your time today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm glad to come back. I do miss all of what we were trying to accomplish on campus around diversity, equity, and inclusion. So anything I can do to support that, I'm there.
Thank you so much, Sid. And then I have some follow-up questions here. Let's see. Okay, I'll go back to Michael. Did you retire with a plan, or are you just kind of making it up as you go? Be honest.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed my work with UC, and I did think I would probably retire later. I thought, well, I'm going to work probably till I'm 65, maybe, with UC. So at the same time, I didn't know exactly when, but when the opportunity came, and it was good. It was good enough. My numbers, my finances worked well enough. I had been thinking about it, and I did have a plan. I mean, it was one of those things where a lot of the pieces that have been mentioned became very important. My social network, my family network, my contacts, my volunteer work, all those things became super important to make that transition, because I think otherwise I probably would have been bored out of my mind. It wouldn't have been fun, but it came together. So I think all those things that were shared earlier, they've been very important to me. I had, people who I had worked with before who wanted to know if I was available to do some consulting work. And now when I was, getting ready to retire, I was ready to do it. And I can pick and choose my hours and my clients and how much I want to do of it. I had my volunteer work, already there that I could grow. A lot of my work with the Chicanx Latinx Alumni Association and volunteer work there with the Chancellor's Chicanx Latinx Standing Committee. I could step up and I could make all those commitments. I probably, on average, have 2 or 3 campus meetings a week while I'm a retiree. And I have the time to do it, to serve. So yeah, I felt like I had a plan. I wasn't exactly sure when I was going to pull the trigger on it. But I did, and it worked. I'm very grateful for it. I also had some things that I didn't completely plan on doing in terms of retirement. And this was kind of mentioned earlier. I lost my father, and to be able to be around in his final days was incredibly meaningful to me. I've lost other close family members as well, and to be there for them has meant the world to me. So I have some time to be there, and I'm just very, very grateful that I'm at a stage where I can do it.
Thank you, Michael, for also bringing up loss. I think it's the second time that we've talked about loss of loved ones on the panel so far, and the importance of community and being there. For Harry, so we have seen some things in the chat about rehirement. I think it's something that you may have coined, and we have a question about you. Let's talk about returning to work in retirement, or unretiring, or rehirement. Share your experience with working or volunteering. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I didn't really have a plan. I felt when I retired, I was like tired. So I was just gonna sit back and watch Jerry Springer in my sweats and not having to think about anything, not having to make any decisions, not have to do anything, but as my wife said, eat bonbons and drink a Mai Tai or something every now and then. So I was home for about a year, and then I get a call from the president of Sonoma State asking me if I would come there and be interim vice president while she continues to search for her VPSA. So I think Judy Sakaki in many ways became my agent, because after that stint at Sonoma, I then found myself at Cal State San Bernardino, and then at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm currently working for the California Institute of the Arts, which is a private institute in Valencia. I can look at Magic Mountain from my office practically. And this president found me on LinkedIn. I looked at my background, had asked initially for me to come do some consulting work, and then said, hey, wait, you've done this interim vice presidency 3 times. Maybe I want you to come here and do that because we're recreating student affairs here. We had a WASC accreditation survey, and I really need somebody who understands student affairs that can help us rebuild that division. So it was probably more accident than plan. I'm not strategic. I'm too lazy to be planning that way. But I think what I found interesting is that my reputation is so much more than I ever thought it was. I was actually talking to a colleague this morning. He was interviewing for a job and said, "Oh, the woman I just interviewed with knows you." It said, "You're like a legend." And I'm just like, "Are you kidding me?" Because I don't see myself that way at all. I'm just kind of doing the work and handling my business and kind of moving on. And so, so I would say this: if you're thinking about retirement, here's some, interestingly enough, because UC has its own retirement system. When I went to work for CSU, they're in a different retirement system, which meant that I could really draw my pension from UC, but work 100% time for CSU. And so in some ways, it allowed me to double dip. There were pros and cons to that. But I also think it makes you think about, what do you want to do? This has less to do with retirement, but more about just thinking about this. I would tell people never put off doing something while you're waiting for retirement, because there are things that happen once you retire. My wife and I are thinking this: we're going to travel. Well, if she had some mobility issues, so once I retired, maybe traveling is not going to be the thing that we were able to do, or you may lose a partner. And you've had this plan. I met a man who just took an 18-day cruise. He and his wife had planned this round the world, or this world cruise, and his wife died in July. And so it's like he thought, I could either sit at home and be sad, or I could go on this world cruise and try to enjoy myself. But the pain was still fresh for him, and I could feel it in his voice when he talked to me. And so I would think there are things that happen to us. And I admit, I was really all in Berkeley. I mean, I was a workaholic, and I'm actually that way in all these interim jobs. I haven't lived with my wife in 4 years, and she's a great person. We've been married for 44 years, 44 years in January, and I was supposed to be home now. I was supposed to finish this job here in December, and they kept needing me. And she said, I know I wanted you home, but I see that they really need you, and you're actually bringing value to them. So go ahead and stay. Help them finish it out. You'll get home eventually. But it takes a partner like that is kind of understanding. Because in many ways, I retired early to spend more time with them. And then I've done just the opposite by taking on these interim assignments. And so I think you really have to think through what that looks like for you long term. The pandemic. Who would have thought we would have had a pandemic? So even our plans to travel were changed because we couldn't go anywhere. The world was shut down. So I just tell you, if you're thinking about retirement, take advantage of your vacation time. Take advantage of the things that are available to you while you can still enjoy them and appreciate it. I watch so many elderly couples who are in a wheelchair or on canes trying to travel, and then they're unable to see a lot of the sites because you leave this country, it's not as disabled accessible as America is, and so you miss a lot of those opportunities. So I think retirement's not for everybody. If you enjoy work, if you enjoy the work, do it. I initially thought I was going to do some consulting, but then I actually never got around to it because these other assignments became available to me. So something to think about, but also take some time to relax. That year off really helped clear my head and actually made me ready to feel like, okay, I can go out and do a little bit more of this now that I've had a chance to rest. So probably number one, take care of yourself before you take care of before you think about rehiring.
Thank you, Harry. It sounds like you and Michael have taken really different approaches as far as like the planning, the not planning before the retirement, and then you're both like doing what works for you. And somebody in the chat said, really love that advice that you gave, Harry. What is it? Don't wait until retirement to do things you want to do. Following that seems like it would help a lot with the transition from one phase to the next. And then someone else is saying that they're seeing that retirement glow in our panelists. So that's awesome. I'm gonna go back to Marilyn now. Marilyn, when we met, I think it was just last week, and we had a little chance to talk, I asked everyone, if you know, there are ways that you stay connected to the UC Berkeley community. You talked about, you know, missing your colleagues. You were surprised about that, how much you miss them. And I'd love the audience to be able to hear how you stayed connected to UC Berkeley.
Well, firstly, Harry, thank you for saying what you said about, you know, don't wait to do things. I think that's so important. 3 years after I retired, my husband became ill. And for the last 3 years, I've been his caretaker. And for the last 12 months, he became extremely ill, and my life completely changed. He was in great pain, and so I was his caretaker 24/7. I did everything. I fed him, I clothed him, I bathed him, I changed his diapers. I did everything because I could do it best. And because I took my marriage vows, I held them close to my heart in sickness and in health. And this past April, after 48 years of marriage, he passed away. And Aaron was my beloved love of my life. And it has changed. It has changed every aspect of my life. The way I shop, the way I think, the way I watch TV, the way I cook. I never thought I would be in this situation. He was everything to me. One of the cute things he used to do was when I was working, I would find little treats in my purse. He would put Cheez-Its or gummy bears or this or that. And he was a great cook. And after he passed away, I didn't even know how to make coffee. So I am on a brand new journey in every aspect. And I have good days and I have bad days. I don't regret all that I did to help him the last months of his life. I really thought I came very close to having a physical and mental breakdown, because that was just my life at that time, and I don't regret it. What I'm learning now after his death is self-care. I'm a Comanche woman, and I don't have examples, role models of Comanche women that put themselves first. No, we put our families first. We put our children first. Self-care is a new concept for me, and I'm struggling with it each month, to take care of myself, to be kind to myself, to be gentle with myself, to put myself first. And I'm really committed to being a great role model for my daughters and for people that I love who are close to me. I forgot the question.
Marilyn, you gave us so much more than the question that I asked was getting at. I just want to thank you. You're getting so much love and warmth and gratitude, and you're getting hugs in the chat from our audience. And you really touched me a lot. I think a lot of people feel the same way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you mentioned being kind to yourself, gentle to yourself, putting yourself first. You're committed to being a role model for your daughters, those you love. And I will say that, this is being recorded, and so we will share it with our communities. And I think you're a role model for a lot more than that, and without even meaning to. Why don't we come back to you? I'm going to ask Sid the other question, and then maybe we can come back and ask you the other question that I set before. So I was first, before we move on from this, I also wanted to see if Sid or other panelists had a reaction or comments. I want to make this as conversational as possible. And so Sid, do you have anything that you would like to add or any thoughts?
Well, yeah, one of the things I mentioned about the pandemic, but at the same time, there's some sort of divine intervention that occurs when you end up doing something like retiring before you're really ready to do that. And I thought I was going to work another 4 years and then retire. And you noticed that in my bio, I was on campus 11 years. So I had 2 other complete careers before I came to campus. And I thought coming to campus would help me ease into retirement. But when you're in a startup of an organization, because the Office of Equity and Inclusion was brand new, we were the first university in the country to have somebody who was focused only on staff diversity. So everything was startup. And that was such a challenge and a good one because it made me happy to be involved in doing the work and figuring out what was going on. But at the same time, my partner was getting ill and I knew I needed to make a decision about leaving. And also the year I retired, my older brother and his wife passed away from COVID in Georgia. And, we went through those kinds of issues with losing family members, even losing neighbors. I mean, there's something about having to go through that loss that makes you re-examine your own life and what you're doing. And one of the things I made note of too is the fact that I wish I had taken the time before I was officially retired to look at my own health situation, because I ended up having some health challenges that I didn't know I had and having to do that. And now, in fact, next week I'm having cataract surgery. And, so you have all of these other things that come up that you really should pay attention to and take care of. And I think the other thing that was on my mind about thinking about all of this is really doing your homework. Once you've made the decision about, looking at retirement, talk to Fidelity about all of your accounts, talk to HR, do all of the things, maybe even get an estate attorney to help you figure out what's going on. I come from a very large family, so there's always drama with, the cousins and now there's no aunts and uncles left on both sides of my family. They're all gone. But, thinking about all of those things and making sure that you're keeping yourself at the center of what needs to happen, because it's so easy to get caught up in what other people's needs are that you're not taking care of yourself. And so I think I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, thank you, Sid.
Isela,
Yes.
Isela, if I might
Harry.
add something,
Of course.
one thing I would say that I did that I thought was actually helpful. Our home was going to be about 20 years old, so we actually made a conscious decision to start replacing major appliances and things while I was still working, so that when I retired, I didn't have to take the retirement income to cover those kinds of expenses. Mm-hmm. So if and I knew, I was going to retire the next 5 or 7 years. So I kind of backed it up and said, okay, let's start replacing, dishwasher, stove, and refrigerator, mm-hmm. roof, and counters, and those kind of things, so that by the time I retired, that was an expense I didn't have to worry about. I have maybe the roof left to do because it had a 30-year plan on it. But I think we oftentimes kind of put off that stuff, and while you're still working, you at least have the income to pay it off and give yourself enough time to do that, rather than having to dip into your retirement savings or something else where you can't plan for it because it's now a crisis and you don't have the time to wait.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate that because both of you actually anticipated a question that one of our audience members put up about, giving ideas for planning for someone who's 10 years away from retirement. So while you didn't say that exact number, it's really great advice that we're hearing from you here.
Yeah, I would add, do everything you can, even if it's a small amount, anything you can add to your 403B, to your Roth, anything you can add in any of those accounts, do it. Even if it's a small amount, my goodness. I didn't do that much early on, but I would say like my last probably 5 years or so, I started putting more in there just because I started thinking about it more, like it's gonna come. And this is a chance to sort of put some money away while I'm making more money. And then I have it. And that's been a wonderful little, cushion that I can draw upon to pay for some of the things that Harry's talking about, where I don't have to, I have my monthly with my retirement. I got my consulting thing and that's doing that. And then if I need some money to take care of some things, we're doing some things around the home right now. I've got this account that I can draw from and it's there and I don't have to sweat it. So every little bit you can put away, it's a bonus. And then I'm really excited is because the beauty of UC retirement and putting these things away is I'm not even touching Social Security. I can wait, till I'm 67 or even later if I want to take Social Security. And the longer you wait for Social Security to withdraw, the larger amount you'll get.
Can I just add one thing about Social Security too? I think they've increased the age now up to 72. You can wait until you take your Social Security. And they started taking Social Security out of my checks when I was in high school. I've been working since I was 14. And so I was just shocked at how much money is in that Social Security pot. And I also didn't know until I went to one of the retirement seminars and the Social Security office came through that because I'm a widow, I could have been collecting my husband's Social Security instead of mine. And so that's what I did. And so now I have until I'm 72 to get his Social Security and then mine kicks in. So, it pays to, if there's anything that you have a question about when you're going to these presentations and things, follow up on it and get the true story about what's possible and what's happening.
Thank you all for all those tips and all that advice. I'm going to steer it back because some of these conversations tend to go into like some of the details about the finance. And so thank you for that. And we're going to steer it back to things around relationships. Marilyn, from our conversation, when I met with you about a week ago, we all met together and we got to know each other a little bit better. You mentioned some ways that you're staying in touch with UC Berkeley and how you're feeling connected and how, do you remember? Yeah. Do you want to talk about that? Yeah.
Well, I don't know, just in the midst of my grieving this year, something wonderful came up. Right now, I'm mentoring 2 freshmen at Cal. One's a Native American student from Oklahoma, where I'm from. And then I just found out like a month ago, my backyard neighbor, she's a freshman at Cal. So she's comes home on weekends and we sit in the backyard, and there's something so wonderful at being able to talk to students once again. That's what I loved all my years at Cal, was just having those wonderful relationships with students, helping them figure out their finances, chastising and rebuking them when they didn't comply with things that would make their life so easy, teaching them how to ask questions when they went to the financial aid office, working with the football team who I would be invited to their football camp in August, and And I always cracked up because they called me OG, go to Marilyn Brown. She's OG. She'll help you get so-and-so, but on the other hand, they were like my sons. And if they didn't comply with the payment plan, I've had more than a handful pulled off the practice field to, I knew all the coaches and I'd have them pull off the practice field to, to let me know why they miss making those payments. And one of my favorite phrases to the football team was, look, don't make me call your mama, because your mama is always going to agree with me. So I just love, that's one thing I'll have to say. I'm so enjoying working with my two little students right now. I hope to expand it some ways, but just to have that connection is so rewarding, because, I went to Oklahoma State University and I came from great poverty. And my mother she was a single mother and she didn't know how to help me. And I went 2 years there, and then I was let go on academic probation because I was just this little hippie girl. But I will tell you something, that experience of being let go of OSU and then coming to California and then eventually coming to Cal, that has helped me be the person I was on campus. I know what it's like to be poor. I know what it's like to not be able to call mama or daddy and ask them to help you because there's no money there. I know what it's like to feel inferior, unworthy, dumb, et cetera, which so many of our brown and black students go through. And I feel most proud that's the legacy I left at Cal. I helped hundreds, if not thousands of students hold their heads up high and feel proud. I've had, once I had a student that lived in a box. He was homeless. And guess what? He prepaid his loan and he graduated from Cal. And I will never forget him. There are just so many wonderful stories of success. But one thing I think I feel proudest of is just helping so many of our students who come from struggling households hold their head up high and know that they are worthy and that they're worthy of success and that they're loved and appreciated. Amen.
Marilyn, yeah, you dropped the mic again. Thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for the very clear love you have for the students. You mentioned where you come from and how that's helped inform kind of your heart and your heart work, right? Toward all the love and work you put into UC Berkeley, and you continue to put into those two students that you're kind of accidentally, but it's no accident, connected to now. Hippie girl, OG Mare Bear, right? That's what I heard. I wanted to open it up to any of the other panelists who have any thoughts inspired by Marilyn's last share. Perhaps thinking about how you're connected, how you are, still connected to the UC Berkeley community.
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but it's along the lines of what Marilyn describes. I've been able to keep those connections and grow those connections, mentoring students and serving on panels and doing things with the, Career Center and the Alumni Association and all those places and spaces on campus, the Chicanx Latinx student development and all of that. It's great to be able to contribute and help and mentor so many students. I just love what you're sharing, Marilyn. It's all from the heart. And it's just wonderful. It's wonderful. And there's the people who are most satisfied in life are really those who serve others. That's the greatest satisfaction.
Right.
And you learn more of that, even more so when you retire. The more that you can give back and serve others, it's great. It just brings so much joy to them and to you. And so, yeah, it's wonderful.
You know, I might just add that I'd never underestimate the impact you have on not only just students, but your fellow staff members. I mean, I'm often amazed at the comments that I get. I'll give a quick example. I set up a scholarship in my name at Berkeley before I left. And one of my former students, the RHA president, and I was in New York for a foundation meeting, and I happened to mention I was going to set up the scholarship. And he goes, you know, I've never given any money to Berkeley. I've given to NYU where I got my graduate degree. So I'm going to give money to your scholarship. Well, he actually wound up pledging like a five-digit gift. So the development office was really happy with me. And I was just thinking, I didn't realize the person had that kind of money. I thought, oh, maybe $100 or $500, but had no idea of the impact that had. But he believed in what I was trying to accomplish and the goals that I set for the scholarship, that he was going to do that. And I think I can think of over and over again students who are still asking me for letters of reference, you know, staff who are calling me for advice around jobs and where they want to go next. And that the best thing I can give them is my time. You know, that doesn't really cost me anything. And I'm more than willing. I mean, you can get overloaded, so you do have to kind of balance that. And I'm just finding now that I've lived at Berkeley for 35 years, but now I've been on 4 other campuses, and I've got that same buildup of students following me and staff people following me, wanting me to give them advice and write lists of recommendations. So I've only exacerbated my problem. But I just would say, never underestimate your impact and who's paying attention to what you do and what you say. In fact, one of my former staff works at Stanford. He writes me often saying, you know, I mimic your leadership all the time over here. And just, you know, that your legacy is continuing the work that I do here. And I thought, wow, that's really sweet that you took the time to share that with me, because I'm not, again, how would I know that? I mean, that's not really what I'm trying to accomplish. And so I think the other thing I would say about retirement, the thing that I wasn't prepared for, you do initially try to, every day it's like you're still stuck on the weekends of getting everything done. So you're cramming everything in. I think Marilyn said this a little bit. So that was part of an adjustment when I realized, well, wait, I can go to Costco on Tuesday when nobody's there. I don't have to go on Saturday or Sunday when everybody who's working is there. And it does take your mind a minute to reset itself, thinking, oh, I have all week to do this. I don't have to do the entire backyard on these 2 days and be tired. I can do a little bit every day and make that happen. So I just think that, you know, give yourself that kind of grace, give yourself that kind of time to exhale and ease into it. You know, don't feel like you have to jump into it. It is a bit of it's a shock to the system, but the greatest feeling is when you haven't left your house that day, that month, and a check shows up, that at the next month, that is the most freeing feeling in the world. Trust me. It's like, I didn't have to leave my house and money appeared. I am so excited about that. So that's probably the most rewarding thing about retirement. I just think retirement should start when you're 25 and not when you're 65. So you can really enjoy it.
And the lifetime health benefits.
There you go.
That's great.
Yes.
There's a lot of places, a lot of employers don't give you lifetime health benefits. And to get that, wow. And yeah, and Harry, that's just beautiful what you shared.
Yeah, thank you, Michael and Harry. Never underestimate your impact. You never know who is paying attention. That's what I took from that. And that is, a lot of people are paying attention to you, Harry. I know that. And Sid, we do have a question here from the audience asking, what was the most difficult part of the transition from working to retirement? And if, you know, how long did it take for you to feel like you transitioned? Any tips?
Well, one of the things that happened is right after I retired, I was a part of a professional organization that was also ending after 30 years. And I was a secretary at the time, so I ended up planning their final meeting. So it was 3 months of feeling like I was still at work until we had that final event. And then I had all these ideas about traveling and doing other things. I needed to just sit my behind down and rest. because I knew there were some things going on with me health-wise, but I didn't know that until I was kind of into it. And so really, I think it's important to kind of take stock. And also, even my family would say, wait a minute, I thought you retired. What do you mean you're getting on another plane? And, you know, that kind of stuff. So I started taking it to heart. And I think it was probably like 7 months or so before I really unplugged myself from just saying yes to everything and trying to still do as much as I was doing when I was working full time. And then after that, I said, I need to develop some new habits. And one of them is that now we're starting a huge vegetable garden in our backyard. So it's therapeutic, you know, to have your hands in the dirt and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm doing a little bit of that. And the other thing, just in terms of the connection back to campus, I don't know how many letters of reference I've written for people looking for jobs, and making sure if I find out about something somebody might be interested in, I try to pass it along. And that goes a long way, because there are quite a few recent graduates who I've helped to get into a new job. You know, maybe it's not going to be their job forever, but at least it got them going. And so I think that's really important to think about and share as well.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we are actually at time for the panel discussion, incredibly so. I mean, I don't know how that time went so quickly, but it did. It was just wonderful. Marilyn, you did get an anonymous submission to you, a little heart to Marilyn, for touching on an aspect that the person would have loved to see discussed a little bit more around cultural expectations surrounding retirement and that live, work, self-care balance. So just a shout out to you for bringing that up, although we didn't actually explicitly ask that question. There is one more question. I'm just going to stretch it out a little bit. And then I think we're going to stop recording after this, because then we're going to have a casual optional hangout where our panelists are going to hang out until 3 o'clock. But a big question here, does the pension amount you receive allow for you to live relatively well in the Bay Area, or is it a struggle? And I will also say that if anybody missed anything about this conversation, remember, we're recording it. And so we're going to be distributing it to our communities and to the people that attended here. And so just, you can go back and watch. So does the pension amount you receive allow for you to live relatively well in the Bay Area, or is it a struggle?
I would say that you do got to do some budgeting. You do have to do some budgeting. And I think that if I didn't have the money that I set aside in my 403B or put away, you know, along the way, and I wasn't doing my consulting, I think it would be harder. But because I have those couple things with my pension, it's fine. It's enough. So I think that's why, you know, I would say, you know, reemphasize again what I was saying earlier, is if you can put away a little extra, you know, while you're working, it makes a really big difference. I would say the other thing too in the Bay Area is, if you are fortunate enough to be in a home that you own, and I realize what does own mean. You're in a home where you have a mortgage and the bank owns it, but you know, you're building equity. You're in a much better place than people, I think, who are not, just because real estate prices have gone crazy. So my house payment was a lot 16 years ago when I first bought our house, but now it's 16 years later, it isn't as big. It doesn't feel as big because, you know, inflation and cost of everything else. So I think that those things help in the Bay Area. I do know people who have retired, who maybe were renters, and they take their UC pension and they go somewhere else where the cost of living is lower, and that pension serves them really well.
Thank you, Michael. Maybe one more panelist that has some insights about that question. Does the pension amount you receive allow for you to live relatively well in the Bay Area, or is it a struggle?
Well,
Marilyn.
I'm, you know, growing up poor, and my husband, he was poor. He came, you know, Texan boy. His family was poor. I've always been terrified of money. Terrified. Culturally, we didn't know about saving. We live paycheck to paycheck, that sort of thing. And I must say, and I was totally surprised by it. After I retired, my husband was retired, I was amazed at how much money there was we were getting each month. I don't know how that happened. I'm amazed by it. And I'm not boasting, don't get me wrong, I'm not boasting or anything, I'm just careful with my money even now. Our house is paid for, but I've got an equity line that I need to take care of because we had, you know, roof put in, new bathroom, blah, 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 blah. But if I had known I was going to get this much money, I would have retired earlier. But
You know, I might just add that it's kind of your personal choice. I mean, there's certain things that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
You know, if you're retiring, you've got medical benefits that you want to make sure they're going to transfer where to go. I mean, the retirement center is helpful for that. You know, we have a place in Washington State, and I thought about moving there because there's no state income tax, but they have a pretty high sales tax and some other expenses. So, you know, it's a trade-off. You know, there's some states that have no state income tax, some states have no sales tax. Sometimes your dollar will go farther, but I find that the cost of things like food don't vary that much, whether you're in California or someplace else. Right now, the gas prices are kind of crazy, regardless of where you go. But I think it is a personal choice. You really have to kind of explore that, and especially if you anticipate having some health challenges, you want to make sure you can go someplace where those benefits will be helpful for you. I mean, I have Kaiser, so Kaiser's now in Washington State. So if I decided to go there, there would be no change, right? And they've been in Oregon, so there's no change there. I think Oregon has state income tax, but they have no sales tax, but their state income tax may be more. So you just have to talk to your financial advisor and your consultant. I think your tax consulting people about choices if you want to leave California. It's hard to come back if you leave. That's the difficult.
Thank you all for just opening yourselves up so transparently today, and for you know, kind of, I wanted to make sure that we hit those questions that people put out there, so we did that. And I think we can stop the recording now.